Joanne Robinson, in case you don't know me. I am the treasurer of UCO. I've been so since the election in March. And in the past years, for those of you that have been here for a while, we've had these sort of town hall budget prep type meetings back in the day. And my intention is to go back, because when I first got here, that was one of the very first things I did. I wanted to see where do we spend our money and what's this organization look like. So that's my intent today, is simply to reintroduce this concept that the budget does not get done in the back room somewhere over at the UCO office and mysteriously put into some spreadsheet that the people get to vote on. This is all your money. This is your organization, and it's my organization. You all elected me as treasurer, and the very first part of the treasurer's job, and very plainly spelled out in the bylaws of UCO, is that the treasurer is to present with the finance committee a budget for the coming year at the October delegate assembly. So here we are in July, starting that process, because you can't do this alone, you can't do it in a back room, it's never accurate, and it's never fully understood and accepted. That's my goal, is simply to talk about the budget as it is today. And I want you to keep in mind that the budget that we have today is sort of cobbled together, and it was never actually approved by the delegate assembly last year. When that does not happen, the executive board can go ahead and okay it, and then David Israel signed off on it, and we went ahead, because we have to get it out so that your property managers can go ahead and get your coupons in the mail for those of you that do that and whatnot. So we can't delay this. So I want to get started. The best place to start, I believe, is with our existing structure. So what I want to do is introduce you to someone you may or may not know, is Chris Shepard, who's back there with our budget. Chris has been with us for many years. He's been through several treasurers, and he is our finance department, essentially. He does our bookkeeping, he does our budgets for us, and helps us through the day-to-day, making sure everything. The second most important thing the treasurer does is I make sure the bills get paid, and on time and accurately. So Chris is the person behind all of that. Now,
is he full-time, 40 hours a week?
No, Chris is a contractor, actually. He is he's also a property manager. He works, what would you say, 20 hours? 15, 10 hours? As
probably 20, 25 a week.
Yeah, as, some months are more than others, like this month. So a few more hours this month, because we're putting together budgets and things. Now, beside me is Mike Murkowski. Some of you may actually recognize Mike from around. He hasn't been here in a number of years, but Mike used to be with the firm that did our auditing. Judah and Eskew was our auditing firm. We now have a different firm doing our audits, a separate firm, but Mike has agreed to come back in the capacity that some of you may remember Sebastian doing. He's our consulting accountant. So he's up to date on all of the laws, all of the regulations, all of these are our CPA, the guy that knows the current information of what's out there and works with other communities such as ours, so he knows the community laws and such. So with that all said, I want to welcome you all here. I mean, it's fabulous that you all showed up. Thank you. I appreciate it. And I'm going to turn it over now to Chris to go over and review the first 6 months with the budget sort of as we have it. And there's some major parts that we can explain why the numbers look a little askew. So I'm going to, yes.
May I ask one question before
Sure.
we get started? Why wasn't the budget approved to go forward?
I was not the treasurer then. There was a lot of discussion back and forth. Committees were given material. There was no unanimous votes taken, there were no votes taken on some things, because we simply didn't get it. We just didn't have, we asked questions and never got answers. So, Mary?
I can't see that. I don't know if everybody else can see it.
Best that we can do.
That's a little better. Magnify it a little bit. That's good.
Yes, we are recording it, and I will be putting it, it'll be on TV, yes. Mhm. Hopefully, I don't know.
Could we have a handout next time?
Well, next time, we're gonna get down to the nitty-gritty. That's next, it's August 21st. Today is more about reviewing where, in general, things are. That's why I don't want to inundate you with a lot of paper. Right now, this is, it goes out at the delegate assembly every month. So you're getting, and I will be glad, it's treasurer1@unitedcivic.com. I'm sorry, unitedcivic.org. Email me, I will be glad to send you anything that you want from today's presentation. Anyway.
Okay, we're ready to go. All right, hello everyone. So basically, this is the old format. The past, I think, last 2 years, a different format was introduced. We went back to the old format. It's nice and simple. It's easy to read. I think it's 4 pages, which is nice. So up here, we have our income. Now, these are all the actuals that we spent up until June 30th. So this is a 6-month actual. So this is all the income, and it's in line. The income, that's what your associations pay to UCO, and it gets distributed out throughout the different line items. If we move down here, we've got the transportation expense. This is split up into a regular contract, which is what we pay monthly regardless. We've got the excursions and the fuel. The fuel's a new one for last year. It's something that the bus company's been charging separately for, so we split it out. We are a little over budget on the contract, and as Joanne was saying, there was a disconnect with the budget for last year, so we were unable to. Sorry, give me 1 second. Sorry, I need to make this so it doesn't go to sleep so quickly.
Might be underpowered.
Good call. We will soldier on. So as I said, we are a little over budget so far with the transportation. That was a budget item issue that we're aiming to fix this year using the subcommittees. Next, we've got the security expense. And once again, they've recently separated out their fuel costs, and we've also, they're using EVs now, so there are some nuances to that contract as well. Joanne, I don't know if you want me to go over the actual numbers, or if we're just discussing. Okay, yeah, in general, so that's our security expense. These numbers, in parentheses, all right. Actually, I got an idea. These numbers in parentheses are negative numbers. So these are ones where we are all right. These are ones where we're over budget. And these are all estimates. This line item right here is basically, since it's 6 months, it's these numbers multiplied by 2. So we estimate that, we take it against the budget that we have set, and that's how, along with additional information from the committees and from updated contracts and things like that, that's how we determine the number for 2025 as to what the budget's going to be. We're still in the infancy stage. We don't have any numbers over here other than the reserves, which we know based on the reserve calculations and the estimated useful life remaining, what that's going to be in the ballpark of it. Moving down to landscape and irrigation, we've got our monthly landscape contract, the tree trimming, beautification, just the larger projects, installation of flowers, changing of the scenery around the community. Then the monthly pump reading and the irrigation repair. Previously, irrigation was on a separate line. It is the same income line as landscaping, so this year we combined them on the same line to make it flow a lot easier and to make it easier to understand. Next up, we've got the cable service. We're with Atlantic Broadband, as your Breeze line, as you all are aware. We've got 5 years left on that contract, and there is an elevator in that, so we will be accounting for that this year with the new expense. Let's see. All right, next we've got the ambulance contract, which we've had. They've not changed the ambulance contract in a number of years. I do not know if they're going to change it this year, but we do have a committee for that. And then it's the reserve funding. So this year we're funding a little over $1 million into the reserves. The UCO reserves are extremely well funded. They have been, but we will continue to fund them well in the event that we need them.
Question,
Yes.
what's the total number of reserves you have today? Approximately.
Approximately, it's over $12 million.
$12 million.
$12 million, yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Moving on to the general administrative, these are ones that we don't have contracts for. These are the day-to-day expenses, repairs around the community, road repairs, smaller road repairs, things like that. It doesn't cover the repaving of anything, and we do have a reserve item for that. But basic office day-to-day, we've got our audit that we do annually. That was just done, and I believe the report will be ready soon.
And it's available at the office.
Never mind, I stand corrected. We've got the salary. We have 2 salaried employees, or 2 employees on payroll, sorry, at the office. Bookkeeping, the monthly computer maintenance, legal counsel, insurance, things like that. This is all basic stuff to run the day-to-day. Insurance is definitely the biggest, as I'm sure in most of your buildings, I'm sure the insurance is the largest expense. Unfortunately, that's the way of the world nowadays. So UCO feels that as well, and it's something that we all have to grin and bear, unfortunately. Then we've got our general utilities. The electric and the water, that covers all of the irrigation, the pumps, street lights, pool, laundry, all of those things. Pretty much all the common areas to UCO are covered. Yes, sir.
Chris, would you please tell the committee how much of the budget is contract-based? In other words, how much is discretionary? That's
Okay, that is
roughly.
roughly. No, well, actually, I can give you an exact number.
But
So the general is all of the discretionary. And that this year, the budget was $1,311,304. All other expenditure is contractual. Transportation, security, ambulance, things like that. And the reserves, while not contractual, we are required to fund them, and we've got a sheet for that as well, which I will get to after we get done with this.
So Chris, would it be accurate to say approximately 70% of the budget is contractual, and not subject to?
I'm gonna go even higher.
I was going to say that even higher.
About 14% is discretionary.
Is discretionary?
Yes.
85%.
And even of that discretionary, a lot of that is in contract.
Correct. Yeah, because we've got like the office cleaning and things like that, where we still have to do those. It's not a choice really to and the phone and the utilities and the audit and things like that. So they're discretionary to a point. I would say it's much less than.
So most of our largest service contracts have increases built in, have escalators built in.
Correct. They were determined at the point of signing, and we're locked into that for the most part. So that ends the general expense and the contractual expenses, because then what we do is we get into the other expenses. We do have rental income that we get from commercial rentals. We rent to Seacrest and Breezeline, and we receive income for that. We've got our investigations, the background checks from your buildings, they go through UCO. Gate passes, the barcodes that you put on your car. And then we've got the reporter and laundry. Both of those are, I hesitate to say income producing, because ultimately the goal of all of these accounts is to net zero. I mean, if we break even at the end of the year, we did a great job. If we end up making some money, wonderful. But the goal is always to at least break even on all of these sub accounts, on the laundry, on the reporter, barcodes, things like that. And that's what's covered here in the other income. Any questions about what I've gone over so far? Yes, ma'am.
Chris, the money for the theater, is that strictly WPRF?
That's strictly
So they-
WPRF.
okay.
Yeah, UCO does not have anything to do with the clubhouse.
We don't
or-
have to pay them if they don't make a profit or anything, or is there a contract with them?
That I do not know. UCO doesn't have to pay, no.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
How much of the $12 million in reserves is in a high interest-bearing account?
That's a very good question. Joanne has been working very hard to figure out the best way to utilize what money we do have. And I believe at the moment, because we are limited by the FDIC, to ensure that all of the community's money is safe. So we're limited at that $250,000 cap. So while we do have $12 million, investing that safely and securely is a process, because we have to keep it under that $250,000 cap. We do have one high interest account now that Joanne has set up, and we're working on getting more of that into those type of accounts. Did that answer that for you?
I was under the impression that since we're, a village, that you could invest more than the $250,000 cap.
No, we're still limited by the FDIC when it comes to that. We can invest more in separate accounts, and that's what we're looking at doing, is taking that $12 million, breaking down a portion of it into $250,000 well, less than 250,000, but below that cap increments in opening different accounts with that.
So really,
Oh.
realistically speaking, we could have 10, 250.
Well, let me just explain. There's something called a sweep account, and it's in commercial, it's hard to explain this from, we all look at these like CD accounts that we personally could go get, and, you know, I went and got one of those for us, because it was in our bank. It was just moving it from one account to another in our bank. But commercial sweep accounts, right now, I could move that $12 million easily to a sweep account with Truist at 1% interest. So what we're looking for is something a little more than one. Right now, the 250,000 that I have in there is 4.25. But that's a money market. We have to ladder the money out, and what we're talking about here is a cash utilization program. That's a complicated thing to do with that much money so that it's safe and available, or liquid, as they say in banking terms. So you have to have the liquid portion of it so that if we need it, we're not going to be paying penalties. And we're working on making sure that we get enough information about the available programs that are out there, and the money market question and the CD question is going to have to be answered separately, and we're working on that. Okay.
The last treasurer was considering T-bills. Would you consider T-bills, because they're guaranteed? You can't get a more guaranteed by the federal government.
Absolutely, once the bylaws are changed. Because our bylaws, as you know, restrict us to CDs.
No, you're wrong, you're reading it wrong. The bylaws.
That's what our attorney told us.
Bylaws, well, the attorney doesn't know how to read it.
Well, I'm not going to argue with the attorney.
Bylaws say that you have to invest in federal security funds, which the T-bills are.
Okay, it doesn't say that, Robert.
When it comes to the law, there's different ways of reading the law.
Okay.
So you need to know that.
And we have counsel, and we're going to follow our counsel's
One
advice.
counsel which has been known to be wrong on many occasions. Did you get another opinion?
Okay, we'll take that under advisement. I
Can you
mean,
provide the microphone for the audience?
Yeah, we can't hear the questions. If you could repeat the questions.
No, give her a mic. It's about the mic.
yeah, we're really not, this is really, for us to give you the information right now, we're gonna have further meetings, and we're gonna have a specific meeting about this subject. So I just don't want to get bogged down in that particular subject today. So I want to carry on, if you don't mind, because there's a lot of information here to give you, and it's going to get boring real quick. So,
Since you're talking about investing the reserve money, $12 million, I'm very, very happy to hear that you started the process.
absolutely.
I'm
And
very,
I
very happy
took the
because-
first step that could be taken
Right.
very easily.
So-
The rest is a little more complicated, and we're going to do it. And we're going to do it with the advice and consent of committees, not, 2 or 3 people just putting something together. It's going to be done so that you all know what we're doing.
Okay, my big overall question is, the longer we wait and to invest the remaining amount
And
of
I'm not
money-
waiting.
I didn't finish, okay? We're losing money for the delegates.
Well,
Okay, so my question is, approximately, how long do you think it will take to invest the lion's share of that $12 million?
it will be part of our budget that we propose in October, so that as of January 1st, we have a plan that is in action and working.
We can't do it any faster?
No, that's too much money, and there's too much at stake.
We're losing income.
And we are making, just in the last couple of months, we've made money, so, we're getting there, and we will be we will be
I
doing.
appreciate what you've done.
Thank you, thank you. Let's get back to what is a little bit more everyday stuff.
All right, well, since we are on reserves, this is our current reserve schedule. I was incorrect about the reserve amount. At the end of this year, we should have $13,115,242 in the reserve accounts. And as you can see, we've got our estimated total cost of repairs, our balance, the remaining years, total life, and what the annual contribution is. And then over here is using all of that and the formulas that are in this sheet, it lets us know what the balances will be at the end of next year. Using this sheet with all of this information, we should have $14,137,000 next year in reserves at the end of 2025. Now that number does adjust because every now and then we do use money out of there. If a generator goes out, we have to replace the generator. Obviously that resets the remaining useful life and decreases that account so we can move things around. This should be something that you all are familiar with. I'm sure your buildings have a similar structure for your reserves, hopefully. Any questions about this or the process behind it? Yes, sir.
Chris, the biggest number on that reserve schedule are roads.
Yes.
You still have problems?
Oh, no.
Chris got a mic, he's gonna
Yeah.
answer the question. Chris, maybe we can get into how we got to the 12,000 number.
12 million. Well, so 12 million, that is to replace, remill, repave all of the roads in the village. As I'm sure you're aware, there are lots of roads in the village. So so that number is extremely high, but it's also extremely expensive for that process. That would be, in the event we had to replace all of the roads at once, that is the estimated cost of that.
And the last time we did this job in, what, 2009? 5.5 million, if I remember correctly. So it's a guess, but it's roughly done.
And I believe that was just the,
That was a mill and overlay,
right,
not bust down to the shell rock.
right.
Exactly.
Right.
Who owns the roads? Does WPRF own the roads too?
No, UCO owns the
Well,
roads.
they own everything else, right? They own the land.
No.
Yes, they do. We only have a lease.
Yeah.
There's a lease on everybody's condo till 2074, and then the lease has to be renewed, or,
Okay, so, sir, what you're referring to with a lease is for the recreational facility, which we're sitting in right now. That's a mandatory lease that is in effect till 2068. It's a 99-year lease. As far as who owns the roads, some of them are in fact UCO property. They're owned by and maintained by UCO. Others belong to the constituent associations. It's on there. But we have contracts with each of your associations to maintain those roads. So it's a mix of what we own and what we maintain on your behalf.
well, I was just under the impression that the underlying land of under every condo, for example, is owned by WPRF.
No, that is not correct.
So we own the land in fee
You,
simple?
the association, and you as a unit owner, own the land under your house in fee simple,
Okay,
right?
good.
Undivided interest.
That's what we
It's very
saw.
common. My grandparents went to the grave believing that Chatham didn't own the land under the building. I tell the people
Well,
all the
that's
time.
good, that's good.
But you do own that land. Where the lease is the recreational property.
And all the canals and all the swimming pool, all the swimming pools and tennis courts and WPRF.
That's recreational property.
Right, okay, good.
Okay.
All right. Are there any other questions regarding the reserves or anything else with the budget?
Okay. Now we're gonna go right to Mike.
Right.
And he's gonna talk to us a little bit about where we ought to be at. Looking at this and looking at our auditor's report, things that we should be looking at.
Yeah, what? All right, can you hear me?
Yeah, one of the discussions that we have been having floating about is the commissioning of a reserve study for the UCO property. And what that would be a reserve study specialist, which they're all backed by engineers and stuff. They come into the property, evaluate the condition of the property, and come up with a very detailed report. Generally, they're about 100 pages, they're very detailed, of what your reserve requirements should be going forward. It's supposed to be more of an independent look at the reserves, because obviously, the board is pretty in tune with it, but it's always good to get the experts at it. Specifically, when we're talking, we've got $20 million worth of assets that we're looking at, and I'm going to say they're probably going to identify a lot more. So it's just more of an informational thing to really see exactly where you stand, because these are all just based on estimates, and they're experts in the field, and we somewhat can rely on those experts to provide a framework of how to fund the reserves to see if we're funding enough, too much, or not enough. So that was one of the discussions that I know you guys have been having.
Yeah. That's an area that, and I'm going to ask Chris if he would start sort of marking down some notations of where we're going with our budget process. This is an item that I would like the appropriate committees, meaning our officers and bids and infrastructure, et cetera, to look at funding for a reserve study. In other words, we have to hire a company that specializes in reserve studies. They would come in and give us an honest-to-God view of, much the same as the high-rise buildings have to have reserve studies done over this coming year. So we know some companies that do this, and we'd like to really know, are the reserves that we're using, are these numbers correct? I mean, it is a guess.
Right, and
right now.
just for information purposes, this is really going to be for next year's budget.
Yes.
In order to get one of these, it's a pretty long process, and as you know, they're extremely busy right now with the change in the legislations, with the structural studies needed by the condos and stuff. So this is something that's we're not going to have in time for the October budget meeting. So this is something looking forward. It generally takes a good year to get it up and running, and they'll issue a report and there's some back and forth on some of their estimates and as such.
So what I want to do is ask everyone, ask the community, if they feel that this is something that they want to do to make sure our reserves are sufficient, or if we've got more than we need. Well, let's take a look.
Do you
Olga?
have any idea how much this study would cost?
I will find that out before our next meeting. Right now, we're trying to gather those elements to look into. And that's the point of today's meeting, is that's one that I feel, and that Mike has, and our auditor feels, we should start looking at. So what I would like is to put that on our prospective budget for the coming year. For 2025, let's put some money in there, and I will find that out. If that is indeed something people feel is valuable.
Right.
Our auditor feels it's valuable.
Right, and also to the point that, we're talking about $20 million worth of assets. And the cost of that report is going to be negligible compared to that. You want to make sure that you are properly, it's the right number. Is it 10 million, is it 20, is it 30? We're pretty confident that number is relatively representative, but we want to be a lot more sure of that, and it's just the cost of information.
Could you talk more to the microphone?
Sure.
Yeah. Do we have another microphone?
Yeah, you got it. That one. Yes, don't miss your question.
Yes, please.
All right, guys, I'd like to get a little bit more into what a reserve study would be for Century Village, for UCO. Some of you have done reserve studies for your buildings. I've completed one downtown very recently. This would be the reserve study at 8 Cleveland. Just think what's under your roads. None of us think this, maybe me. At some point, we are going to repave these roads. I don't know when. But what's underneath those roads before we repave them? You have storm drains, sanitary sewers, potable water, irrigation water, telecommunications, cable television. And there's stuff I haven't thought of. All of that has to be put together, what the service life is of this infrastructure, and that's just below the ground. Right, and then you have landscaping on top of the ground. You have street lights. You have perimeter fencing. It's a lot, because this is a big community, and it's more of a city than this would be like a small town having a reserve study. So when this comes, it's gonna be quite detailed, and it'll take some time. It'll be a team of engineers and accountants and lawyers, and, but I think it's something that's valuable, just me.
You also at that point, the legislator has mandated these studies. So even though it's not required, obviously if the legislators think it's a good process, it's probably good for UCO as well.
There is another area that I would like Chris to make a note of also. At UCO, we've sort of pieced together a computer system that's sort of a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and we have a thing that we all refer to as the Z drive, and it's pretty much stuff that was designed by David Israel 12, 15 years ago, which has worked fine. It's just that right now, I think that we're probably at that point where we need to really look at an overhaul of, and you know that's near and dear to my heart, all of the data that we own and manage. It is now, in this day and age, an asset. We don't keep paper records the way we used to. We keep everything digitally now. And even the legislature has come down and said, you all now, at least the larger, not the majority of us, but the larger buildings, 25 and over, have to have their own website. Well, there's a lot of sort of movement toward the digital world, and I think we need to put some money in our budget to do a serious study of how do we handle our information. Are we doing it the best way possible? We do have someone who has been with us many years who can speak to that, and I would propose that we put a significant amount of money in our budget in order to, because we've done nothing. I mean, we have spent very, very little money on any of this, including our servers and our computers and our, we need to probably go, I would say, in the range of between $50,000 and $75,000 in order to bring things up to the 20th century, much less the 21st century. We need to take a serious look at that. So that's the one area that I myself am very interested in.
You want the audience to give you a yes or no on these things?
Not yet. I'm just telling you that these are some of the areas that we as officers and members of the community are putting our thought into, and places we want to go. We will, and anything that if you as community members see an area that you would like to have us consider from a budgetary point of view, is there something you would like us to be doing and looking at? We can have the right committee look at it, we can put it on our list of things to consider for changing the budget in this coming year, and that's the point of this meeting, is to ask you to come back to us with what you see and you think would be valuable to the community.
Would you like to have the audience right now say, like, with a raise of hands, here I agree with putting more money towards computerizing your system?
Not yet. What I'd like is, do you have something else that you would like us, aside from computers and cash management?
You don't want our feedback right now, then?
No, I want your input.
More of a wish list.
Yes,
And as part of a budget, we like to accumulate wish lists, and so that the board can sit and prioritize what they think is most important. So this is just more of a list. We're trying to put it together.
David Furness had his hand up.
I think Helga can go and then I'll take a turn. Thank you.
My input is extremely simple. I would like to keep the budget at the same price. If there are things that we have to enforce to increase, we have to consider decreasing things that we do not absolutely have to have.
Like what?
Because that's for the group to decide, that's within the budget. Because I don't know every item in the budget, but I do know that there are things in there that we either could do without or could cut down on.
Like
There are
what?
things that we have to pay, so we can't change that.
Right.
Okay? There are things that we could stall on, which is the roads. Okay? I
But we
know
don't know
it's
that.
not, I know in reference to the roads, it's gonna cost a lot more than 5 million because they were not done properly the way they should have been done.
Well,
They're gonna probably cost as much as 8, 9, or 10 million dollars, which is gonna take the reserve right out.
that's
That
why,
could be stalled because we could keep playing with the roads, fixing them up from year to year. So these are things I would like to consider. Not a higher budget, but keep it stable. Consider that for a change, and not wanting to say that, we have to do this, we have to do that, we'll increase it.
well, we
No.
we have a certain number of have-tos,
That I understand. I said
and then we can go from there.
I said that.
And that's up to the community. David Furness.
Okay, in the category of have to. One thing I want us to consider in a reserve schedule is the dredging of the North Canal. Now, I want to give credit to the UCO committees and to our VPs that they've been looking into this. The North Canal hasn't been dredged in 50 years. You know what happens with tree growth and everything in the canal?
I live there.
Donald has mentioned that he's seen water back up and come out of the sewers in that area when we've had rains that were not as significant as a hurricane.
Yeah.
There is the issue that we're well aware of as far as trying to get ownership of it so that we can work on it. But why I wanted to bring it up is if we could make a good faith estimate of when we could get ownership and when we could start that project.
Right.
I'd like to have reserve funds ready at that time.
That's one of the next items that I was going to bring up.
I'm
the
sorry,
North
Joanne.
Canal.
I'm sorry, John, and I didn't mean
That's
to
all right.
preempt you
No,
because
that's all right.
you have discussed it at the Finance Committee.
Yes.
It's been discussed
Yes.
by a lot of committees and I give them credit for looking progressively at that.
Yes, and the North Canal is near and dear to my heart because it's right outside my front door. And I go out every morning and watch that water coming up and up and up, and I know it's pushing back toward the rest of the community. So we are, I mean, that literally is one of the main reasons why I want to do this reserve study. I want to make sure that we've got everything looked at, so that's part of it. And back here?
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I'm president of Norwich B Association. So my question is like this. I like the way of thinking of the lady that was talking before me. I don't know what's her name. But I think that the approach is the right approach, and I would like to specify an item that I'm finding is absolutely unnecessary on our budget. This is cable TV. So we are paying for cable TV to UCO 100 for every unit. I can buy a unit for $50, which will give cable for everybody for free. Besides that, everybody who has internet, and today all of them have now internet, can also have a TV. So basically, I think that it will be a huge savings for our condominium at least, and I think for many others, to get rid of this item. Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate your comment.
I would like to say something on that, sir. Are you a unit owner?
Yes.
Okay. Have you read the bilateral agreement for your building?
I think I did.
Okay. Well, in that agreement, it specifically states items that you agree to pay for once you become a unit owner, and cable is one of those. So when no, you can't change it. Because it's part of when you purchased, you agreed to pay that. The same as the buses and everything else.
Hello, Mr. Raptor. My name's Donald Foster. I'm the community manager. And I understand you're the new president of Norwich B. Since you're new, you probably don't realize this, but your association, Norwich B, has a contract with the United Civic Organization, our company, where you agree that UCO will be the managing agent for your building for specific services, one of which is cable television. So you have a contract with us to provide that service, and so we do through a vendor who is BreezeLine. That's not something that could be changed in the budget process. Any contract that we approve is approved by the Board of Directors, which is the Delegate Assembly. The Delegate Assembly makes contracts, and only this Delegate Assembly can kill contracts. So I hear what you're saying, and I understand that maybe cable television isn't something that's important to you, but it is to many people in this community. And unfortunately, the budget process, just not funding it, is not something that's possible. That would be a major, like a bylaw change, followed by an addendum to 309 contracts. All right? I hope I answered your question, and I'm happy to answer any other questions that you have.
Hi, I sent a email to, I forgot her name, the gal who takes care of the buses. Patricia. Never received a response to my email. I tried to go to a couple of the meetings. I guess the last couple of months they haven't had them, or I missed them. Anyway, point being that I know we have a contract with the bus company. I don't know how long it's going to go on for, but to watch all these buses driving around empty is ridiculous. And we're paying for gas.
That is definitely something that we can discuss at the transportation. Now, Patricia's been away for a while, and the last meeting was canceled. I believe she'll be here for their August meeting, so please come and talk about that.
I would be happy to, but I'd love to see that contract renegotiated to something that makes a lot more sense.
Then I would like to see you participate in the transportation committee.
I would be happy to.
Yeah, because that's who negotiates that contract.
Okay, and I know this is old business already. I know you're working on investing our money, but the interest rates have been up for the past couple of years, and we have lost a lot of money by not investing our money. So I hope our budget is not going to go up, because that's all money that we could have gotten for free.
Absolutely, and we are going to be taking care of that. Cash utilization program, keep an eye on that. Olga?
Hold on.
Oh, sorry.
We have one person before
Someone
you.
before you.
I'll be quick. I just have a concern that maybe we could also put on the wish list something to do with our CERT program. Investment in a ham operator system and antenna, and the whole bit, like a more permanent antenna, you know, that sort of thing. So just to embellish that program.
I would encourage, John Hess is the chair of that committee, and you know, I would encourage him to submit to the finance committee any information before our next meeting, so that we can get maybe some rough estimates of what he's proposing. And you know, it doesn't have to be 100%. We don't need that until the October final budget comes through. So those are wonderful suggestions. That's definitely, you know, where we want to be.
To the best of my knowledge, I can remove myself from UCO, stop paying dues. At the same time, I will not be entitled to everything that they give us. But that's an answer to this gentleman, so he knows that he's not forced to remain with UCO. As an individual, you can remove yourself and stop paying dues. Thank you.
Your association, you might be able to. But I don't think so.
Well, so let's look forward.
Can we just have one meeting?
Yeah.
Thanks.
One of the things that we're talking about is the discussion of prospective changes. So, as we spoke, the budget is primarily a few large contracted items. For example, your cable, your security, and as such. The point of this meeting is so we can delegate it to those committees, and I really appreciate UCO having the committees very active, and it's great that you can delegate to them. So for the next meeting, can we impress upon them to give us their numbers, their number?
Absolutely.
But we also want their rationale, not just saying the cable number is going to be this. what is this, where, you know, when's the increase, where they're coming at, so we can review it, the board can review it. But really, you know, moving forward, that's what we really need to do to start the process of this budget. I think the reserves are pretty much nailed down. I think the consensus was we're gonna keep the reserves the way they are pending any, you know, miracles of having a reserve study by October, which we know is not gonna happen. And so we really need to, at this point, start delegating that information. So we talked about the cable. So obviously there's a communication one, I know you're near and dear with.
Yes.
Okay.
Broadband committee.
What other committees are there that can we rely on to?
Well, Judy, we have the CERT committee.
Okay.
We have the transportation committee, of course. The insurance committee is working diligently on, that is another very big, and it's one of the variables. You know, it's always a guesstimate what our, last year we told you 30 to 50% increase. Well, as it happens, the UCO portion of our budget only went up 20%. So, you know, we're giving you reasonable estimates on things like that. So the insurance committee is working at that.
So I know we have our next meeting, it's in August, correct?
August 21st.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
can we get press upon them that we're gonna need those numbers?
Yes, absolutely. We're gonna bring
not on the 21st, please, we're getting a little ahead of time.
Oh, no.
So we can at least plug them in there, and also, more importantly, you know, their rationale.
Sure.
So that we're not just looking at a number.
Sure.
And,
So
you know,
we can explain
because ultimately, you know, the board is the one that is promulgating the budget, even though we're relying on them. We want to be in tune with that, so we know exactly what's going on. Okay, so reserves are there. What other committees are there? You have an insurance committee. That covers most of the budget. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, all the big items. And then, of course, we have the officers in the executive board committee, which they all have input to what we do too, and they're part of our process. So that's where we're, you know, our next steps are to get all these committee inputs as well as, you know, things that we've gleaned from today, put them into our next meeting, get all of the committee information, and then start to flesh out what's this really, you know, start drilling down to the per unit, you know, what are each one of us gonna be looking at next year for a number. So.
And one of the questions, I know we spoke previously about this, but with the clubhouse and the agreement for them, you know, basically that you're paying all for all the upgrades.
Mm-hmm.
Do we want to put anything in this budget going forward? Or I'm thinking maybe that's something that's going to be pushed into the reserve study.
No, the clubhouse is totally separate.
Right.
It's WPRF and it's a separate budget altogether.
But what about, I think you mentioned upgrades or?
Not to, well.
Okay, that comes under the rec lease.
Okay, it's under the rec lease, okay.
That's a separate
Perfect,
payment.
okay, perfect, okay. So
Yeah, the upgrades that I was talking about were for the UCO office.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Perfect. So,
All right.
I think we're cool.
Do we have anything from my officers? Fausto?
Yes, I just received.
I just received an approximate quote to put an electrical charging station by the Plymouth Laundry of about $4,500 for the equipment and plus whatever it costs for the electric to run to it.
That's perfect. We've had quite a few people inquire about when are we going to put in, when is UCO going to put electric charging stations in, because people won't have, you know, EVs. And they have people visiting with electric vehicles. So we're going to put some money in to start that process, at least get one in. And the nice thing is it's going to pay for itself over time. We just need the budget to build it, and then we'll collect money. It's sort of like the laundry. Put the washing machine in and collect the quarters. So we'll be coming back. John?
Just about the investing part, I don't need that. If we're investing this money, I'm not saying all of it in the increments that we talked about, the money that we're making on our money, can we use the money that we're making, call it profit, whatever you want to call it, to offset any increases that we get with the new budget?
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but every penny of interest on a reserve account has to be kept in the reserve. So effectively, it reduces your contribution to the reserve. Like right now, we put $1 million every year into the reserve. So maybe next year,
So
we
there's no
only
way
put
of taking that interest out to
750,000.
offset?
No, you can't offset.
Oh, but
I
if
see
you're,
what you're saying. He's saying
Hold on,
that,
let me-
for the next year's budget, if we could, since we're funding, essentially, it's additional funding for the reserves, would it reduce the amount that you'd have to pay the next year? Now, it's not going to not do that. It will count towards the balance, because the overall balance of a reserve item dictates its funding, along with the remaining useful life and total estimated life. I will say that funding for reserves, reducing the funding for reserves does not reduce your payment nearly as much as you think it does. Because even the roads, where it's a $12 million project, we only put about $500,000, a little less, around $450,000 a year into the reserves for the roads. If we reduce that by $20,000, it might reduce your annual payment $3 total for every individual.
Where does it say that we can't take that interest out and allocate, or whatever you want to call it, into other areas? So we can bring-
there is no legal restrictions, generally for good accounting practices, and generally in a fund accounting, which you guys, essentially have two funds. You have an operating fund, pays all the bills, and you have a reserve fund. Generally, you want to keep them separate and distinct. But historically, also in reserves, that interest is used as a inflationary adjustment. We estimate what it's going to cost, but we're never quite sure of that. Obviously, with the rate of inflation, the interest somewhat mitigates that change.
I had a question about the US item about charging stations for
Yes.
EV cars.
Yes.
I mean, that's basically determined by supply and demand. Do we know the demand for charging stations in Century Village now?
Well, it's sort of anecdotal. It's just, we as officers communicate with a lot of different people in the community for different reasons. And along the way, they'll say, oh, by the way, when are you going to have that? So it seems like that question comes up more often than not. So, we have another.
I just want to make a comment. I bought a new car last year. I wanted an electric vehicle, but I couldn't get an electric vehicle because there was no place to charge it.
There.
And so I think if
Exactly.
we had it.
There you go.
Who's that, Mrs. Conway?
Conwell, yes. Hi.
Look, guys, I agree it's anecdotal, but I'm the guy that writes the anecdotes. Just this morning, I was in Canterbury C, checking on bad tags or some nonsense. There's another Tesla. I keep finding Teslas everywhere, and I don't even know what they're doing is they're going across the street to the Tesla dealership and charging. And that could be a little bit of an income for us. The Palso's thought is to first put them in at the Plymouth Laundry, which would be central to a big part of the community. If the demand proves out, then the next place would be 5400 Fairway Street, which is our Breezeway office, and there's parking there. So it's kind of I think if you build it, they will come, like from the movie. So, and as many of you probably know, our security contractor operates 2 out of their 3 vehicles electric. They're Nissan Leafs. So we have chargers at the UCO building as well.
All right. Anything else that we should consider as we approach the next town hall, where we're going to get a little bit more meat and potatoes on the budget? If not, we're approaching the 1 hour mark, and I will, August 21st, here, 1:30.
Thank you, Joanne.
Thank you all.